Generative AI is hitting max level hype. In March, we saw a robot feed a human while doing the dishes. Nvidia's market cap hit $2 trillion and threw a cult-like festival, and Hollywood is praying 15-year-olds don't create the next Oscar-winning movie in their basement. Gen AI is the new hotness, the mandatory thing every technocrat must obsess over. It's like your friend that still talks about CrossFit and keto diets all the time, but for tech. Like crypto and blockchain and cloud computing and serverless compute and mobile apps before that, generative AI is in a hype cycle, and that has created universal fear of missing out for just about every technology company. And that fear and excitement is pushing them to add generative AI into everything. Sometimes the value is obvious, and other times it feels kind of desperate, like a middle-aged paper salesman trying to seem cool amongst his peers. Should everything have generative AI? Is it that useful? Is it all hype or just a new baseline reality? We're going to talk about the reality of three things: adoption rates, threat to job markets, and what the real value of generative AI can be. To do that, we invited the Edge AI and Vision Alliance to help us understand it. It's the leading organization made up of the who's who of business gadget companies. And our two guests are the original founders.
Joking with somebody, I've come to think of these models as they're slightly like hungover 20-year-old interns, and they're capable of quite brilliant work sometimes, but also sometimes it's like they turn in their homework and you're like, dude, what was that?
Some of the most exciting opportunities are going to be knowing which of these techniques to apply when and how, more so than the underlying mechanics. So for example, my home security camera, especially if it's inside my home, I don't really want to send those pictures and video.
Why not, clips. Jeff? If you're not doing anything illegal, it's fine. Phil Lapsley and Jeff Bier, welcome to Gen AI Nerds.
Kerry, thanks for having us. It's great to be here.
Great. Tell us a little bit about the Alliance.
We're an industry group. We have about 100 member companies and a community of tens of thousands of product developers and others in industry who are working to advance the building block technologies and working to apply those technologies to make all kinds of devices and systems better, easier to use, more autonomous, more efficient, more capable by infusing in them this kind of embedded AI-based perception.
That's amazing. And you guys have a summit that's going to unpack a lot of these topics. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so the Embedded Vision Summit is an annual conference and trade show. It takes place this year, May 21st through 23rd in Santa Clara, California. And this is really the main event annually for people who are developing these kinds of systems and applications that incorporate sensor-based AI at the edge.
Well, Phil and Jeff actually graciously gave us a discount code for anyone who wants to join us. So if anyone wants to join us in Santa Clara, and we'll put that in the link in the description below. So getting to the subject of kind of the hype versus reality, I mean, let's kind of define the hype. I mean, my intro kind of laid out the unbelievable pace of achievement that's happening on a nearly monthly basis. But your alliance has brought together virtually all the leading companies focused on gadgets for business and consumers. So you've seen obviously a lot over the past couple of decades, but how would you quantify the hype of Gen AI versus previous technologies? Just the magnitude of it.
On a scale of 0 to hypey, it's at hypey. Jeff and I were just, as with you, we were at the GTC conference a couple of weeks ago, and it felt like the dot-com bubble in 1998 or something. And that, just to be clear, that's not to say there's not a tremendous amount of value there. I mean, I think the hype is based on underlying fundamentals, but yeah, it's kind of nutty. So
yeah, and I think .com, we didn't even have the velocity to like hear. I mean, the virality back then was just not.
Was much lower, yeah.
I mean, just even conceptually, not even something you could grok. But like now, I mean, since the inception of how fast you can hear about something, I feel like generative AI is just wall to wall in terms of conversation.
Well, yeah, and you have these these Twitter influencers whose entire job is just to summarize what happened in AI in the last 24 hours.
Watch it, Phil.
Oh, sorry, Kerry.
Watch it. Jeff, so do you think the generative AI hype is driven by actual user value or more based on the Silicon Valley kind of pushing it downwards first? I mean, sometimes different technologies, they're kind of chicken or egg is Can happen either way, but what do you
I
think?
think it's more pull. I think people and businesses are excited about the potential here. I think that, you know, it's captured people's imaginations, and
These guys are pretty smart. Like and subscribe so we can keep getting great guests like this.
that's for good reason. It's a very powerful class of technology that's going to apply to many, many situations and applications and problems and businesses. We just, most of us haven't seen anything like it.
What was that chart you shared with me or was going around about ChatGPT hitting 100 million users inside of 2 months, faster than even TikTok and
Yeah.
Instagram? And it's like, but wait a second, this is kind of a geeky text generation tool. Like, I don't think any of the folks working on it probably thought this will go proper viral, like B2C individual viral.
No, that's right. And there were interviews with some of the people at OpenAI afterwards, and they're like, "Yeah, no, we had prepared for 20,000 people in our wildest expectations that might actually start playing around with the system that we had created, and instead it just went completely nuts." And I think it goes able to do so many things. It's multimodal, so it can deal with images, it can produce images, it can deal with text, and it really is basically making the computer act like a human, which is a thing we've tried to do before and really as an industry kind of failed at it, right? I mean, you look at like Siri's pretty good, but it's kind of lame, right? And before that,
Yeah.
there was, Microsoft's various was Clippy or whatever it was, the horrible things that they had years ago, right? But like
Hey, it
this,
looks like you're
this is
writing a letter.
exactly right. Um, but this is different. This is different. This is now there actually is some intelligence on the other side of the screen. It's really kind of amazing.
So when it comes to adoption, I think most people have heard at least of generative AI, if not just ChatGPT being the kind of brand that they've used. But how do you predict people are going to find themselves using it and maybe not even know it? So, Jeff, is it going to get fused into all these things everywhere? Or what's your prediction on how people are going to
Yeah,
interact with it?
yeah, I think again, what's that famous quote? Like any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic,
Yes.
right? So Phil and I have been focused on this field called computer vision for the last 15 years. Computer vision is teaching machines to see. And computer vision is something that people have been working on for decades and decades, and for a long time there was very little progress. And then starting maybe 10 years ago, people in industry started using deep learning, deep neural network techniques, and the pace of progress increased dramatically. And that's why the current generation of, for example, the smart home security camera that I have, it works. And it's really the first one that's worked really reliably, where, for example, I don't get a lot of false alarms because tree branches are swaying in the wind or a spider is building a web in front of the camera. I get correct notifications when I need them, but that has come at a huge cost. It's required tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of example images, and tens of thousands of hours of server time to train these algorithms on very specific things. That's a person, that's a truck, that's a tree, etc. Now, with the merging of language models and computer vision models, it's opening up new possibilities where I will be able to, for example, we talked about this a minute ago, I'll be able to query my security camera and say, hey, did you see any fire trucks today? Did you see any wild animals in my yard today? And it won't be necessary for the developers of that camera to have trained it with a million images of different wild animals because it has this kind of foundational knowledge about what animals are and what wild animals are
Right.
that's largely language based. And so somewhat overnight as a consumer, this camera is going to get a lot more flexible.
Yeah. So it sounds like features within kind of use cases you're already doing. Like I think some people think, when am I using this super generative AI tool? And I think that sounds right, that it would be more like featurettes or like things that make whatever software tool you were using before like better. Does that sound
Yeah, and
right,
a great
Phil?
example of this is, I don't know about you, but I'm on like Amazon a lot reading product reviews. So I'm getting ready to buy like some new earbuds, right? And
Okay.
I want to get ones that are really going to work for me. So sometimes I'll read 20, 30, 40 reviews trying to get a sense of, is this really a good product?
Right.
Now, Amazon's giving me the generative AI authored
Saw that.
synopsis of the user reviews, and that looks pretty reliable. So that's a tremendous time saver, right? Now I don't need to read 20 or 40 reviews. I can just read the synopsis and go, okay, yeah, sounds pretty good. Or maybe I'll read two or three reviews to kind of validate that the summary was accurate. And so it's part of what I'm doing, just like you just said, except now I can spend a lot less time on the tedious aspects of it.
Like if you're measuring adoption rate from like products that people use, that the demand by product decision makers to put it in is nearly like ubiquitous. Like even if they aren't doing it now, they are evaluating it or figuring out what their strategy is because they can't be left behind. It's that whole fear of missing out thing. I'd be curious if from your workings in the industry, what hurdles do you imagine they're going to run into adding generative AI? And let's just for now consider generative AI to be like a superset of AI, like AI's all a little bit generative, but just for the sake of this, let's just say it's one big circle. Like, what do you think they're going to run into in terms of friction points to embed these things?
Use the word embed, and so that's a good place to start where uh, there's going to be a desire in many cases to not share the data not send the data to the cloud, right? So for example, my home security camera, especially if it's inside my home, I don't really want to send those pictures and
Why
video
not,
clips.
Jeff? If you're not doing anything illegal, it's fine. There's a long history of robust security. You don't need to worry about these things
Remember,
ever.
the S in IoT stands for security, Carrie.
Yeah, it wouldn't be in the acronym, Jeff, if it wasn't secure. Okay.
I'm greatly reassured. Nevertheless, I'd really rather have my camera footage from inside my home not leave the premises,
Right.
right? And there's lots of use cases where privacy is important, um, confidentiality may be important, um, quick response time may be needed, um, or it may just be not economical to send all that data to the cloud. Like
Sure.
imagine you have a casino, and in the casino you might have 500, I don't know, 1,500 cameras in the casino. Could you stream all that video to the data center? I suppose.
Yeah.
Would that be economical to stream all that video to the cloud and do the processing there? Probably not.
Right.
So there are many use cases where it's going to make sense to run this stuff at the edge, run the AI at the edge. The thing you mentioned, Carrie, earlier of the car that tells you how to change the tire, or 1,000 other things you might want to do on a car, obviously that should not be cloud-based because I might be in the middle of nowhere with no internet connection and need to
Sure.
change a tire. Okay, so there's lots of reasons, lack of internet access, privacy, or other kinds of confidentiality concerns, economics, of cloud costs, and also um, response times where I may want to do the processing locally. The challenges that arise there are when I'm doing the processing locally, I usually have to live with much lighter weight hardware, much
Of course.
less expensive, smaller, lower power consumption hardware, because that's what I can afford to put inside the floor cleaning robot or inside the mobile phone or inside the car. Why is that an issue? It's an issue because these algorithms, these AI models that we're talking about, they're massive. They're massive. They require huge amounts of memory. They require huge amounts of memory bandwidth to move information back and forth between the memory and the processor, and huge amounts of processing. So getting those models to run efficiently on edge devices, that will be a challenge.
It really comes down to we need the computational power for embedded processors, right? But it needs to be energy efficient. And that's not, doesn't necessarily even mean battery. That just means like the amount of heat that it generates, right? I mean, an
Sure.
example that I have is so you want an AI dash cam that's going to be on your car. Okay, it's on the windshield and you're in Arizona and it's 120 degrees outside, and the thing is baking and internally it's generating 20 watts of power because it's using generative AI. Like that's not going to work. The
Sure.
thing's going to burst into flames. Um, so it needs to be powerful, it needs to be energy efficient, it needs to be at the right price point so that you can start actually embedding it into high volume products. And then I think this is a really key thing is and I know it's one you've thought a lot about, Carrie, is ease of use.
Yeah.
It's how do we make this easy for developers to add generative AI at the edge to their products? Like
Yeah.
I don't have a PhD in generative AI and machine learning, right? I'm a guy who's working on, toaster ovens. How do I then be able to do that?
Well, I think it's a good bracket to the adoption rate portion of this conversation because I feel like I think we're at this wonderful nexus where the excitement can't be any higher, the hype can't be any higher. I think we'll talk about value in a second, but I think people are like, we should figure this out. And I think that's good when people are like leaning into a technology evolution. And then the next one is sort of like, what are the latch points of how we deploy it and use it? And I think a lot of people are like, I don't get it. Why do I need Chat GPT in my tire? And it's like, so break it down and then build it back up to like more specifically like narrow function, right? Like this user manual of an appliance, right? Like that's a dramatic subset of what OpenAI can do, right? But I think that's where we're going to see like adoption and you didn't know it sort of outcomes. And okay, so the second part I wanted to ask you guys about is lots of warranted concern. We talked a little bit about like the security and privacy thing, but obviously the opener was that no more human jobs, right? Terminator 2 is going to do everything I do. I guess my first kind of human question is: have either of you had a moment where you're like, oh my God, AI might do my job? Like,
I found myself suddenly doing something which I never imagined I would be doing, which was I was supervising two workers, neither of whom were human.
yeah,
And so I had, two different GPTs running. One was Bing, one was GPT-4, doing some tasks, and it was just really interesting. Like I had to keep them focused because these things aren't perfect, right? Like Bing in particular, like yeah, it did the first part of the assignment correct, and then I'm like, great, now do another 200 of those, and it completely messed up. And I was joking with somebody. I've come to think of these models as being they're slightly like hungover 20-year-old interns, and they're capable of quite brilliant work sometimes, but
yeah.
also sometimes it's like they turn in their homework and you're like, dude, what was that? Like, no, let's try this again.
Yeah, it's like yeah, I could imagine it's hungover and it's like, what were you thinking? Sort of where your brain
Yeah.
is not, but also like impossibly capable. So I'm with you.
Yeah, precisely.
Did you ever have that feeling like, oh man, like I better start evolving my own skill set or
I think one way to think about it is kind of the analogy to calculators, right? There used to be a profession for humans that was calculating, right?
yeah,
Doing arithmetic, right? And then calculators became widely available. And so the skill of being able to do arithmetic quickly and accurately as a human became a lot less valuable. However, what became a lot more valuable was the skill of knowing what arithmetic to do for a given problem, because now we have sort
absolutely.
of infinite ability to do arithmetic as fast as we could press buttons on a calculator. And so there's like an opportunity for upskilling instead of doing repetitive calculations all day long. If I
Yeah,
can understand like, oh, for this type of problem, here's the arithmetic that's needed, I could have a potentially, higher paying, more interesting type of job. And I think we're in a similar transition point here with generative AI where there are a lot of roles where people kind of follow flowcharts today, like a lot of customer service representative, like, oh,
right.
I have a problem with my health insurance. Well, you can just tell the person you're talking to is really just following, a flowchart. Well, that's very automatable now. And I think one of the things that's exciting about it is it can be automated in a way that performs ultimately as well as your best customer service representative you've ever had, as opposed to, oh, today I got the trainee, and so I'm having a very slow and painful conversation as the consumer because I have the worst customer service representative. Like automating this, I think is gonna potentially make the customer service experience better. And now those people can be, for example, the people who get the problems get escalated to when they're outside of the kind of the flow chart.
Right. What do you think the flip side is on like that? So what do you think the reality is of short-term job threats, like things we've already seen get displaced? And Phil, if I cut you off, then please.
You asked about threats to
short-term job threats.
Yeah. So I think in the short term, the threats are around. It's funny when we were talking before about what do you use ChatGPT, what do you use GenAI for? It's all those kinds of things, right? And so what, like I saw just the other day, Twilio, which is a big email and SMS and communications provider, they just announced yesterday, oh, hey, by the way, when you chat with a customer service agent anymore, you're not going to be talking to a human. You're going to be talking to a Gen AI thing. And they said, if you want to talk to a human, you can escalate to a human. Don't worry, there's still humans behind the scenes. But my suspicion is there's a lot fewer humans than there was 2 days ago. Similarly, we've talked to a couple of companies that are doing work in the quick service restaurant industry. So, okay, instead of going to McDonald's and talking to a human to place your order, you're just going to talk to a kiosk, with a little avatar of a human, and you'll place your order. So, to Jeff's earlier point, it would be great if those people can upskill and do more things, and perhaps they end up being the people who are supervising that sort of thing. But that's a slightly longer term kind of a thing. I think in the short term, there's going to be some displacement from there.
So my next question is, Jeff, I know you do a lot of speaking. Like, what would you advise a college freshman class, right? You're in front of them and you'd say the subject is sort of what should you focus on in terms of skills to develop and what skills you may skip, as compared to when we went to school?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think we are, I believe, at one of these transition moments where, like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, programming skills were really solid, way of building a career. Now, much less so. More recently, being able to, like, for example, knowing how to train a deep neural network, for example, to recognize certain classes of objects that a car might want to know about for safety, lane markings, road signs, pedestrians, etc., that there's been tremendous demand for that skill set. I think the progression is continuing where now the demand is going to be, it's more like that transition from being a human calculator to knowing what calculation is needed. I think where some of the most exciting opportunities are going to be in the next 10 years are knowing which of these techniques to apply when and how, more so than the underlying mechanics, of how does the internal combustion engine work and what's a compression ratio and a cylinder. No. Just imagine we have internal combustion engines and they're getting more and more powerful and more efficient every year, also smaller and less expensive. Where do you want to use them? What's the right place? Where is it sensible to use them, and what kinds of new opportunities does that bring? So it doesn't mean that there's no need for technical expertise, but it's a different kind of technical expertise. We have these amazing models, these large language models, large multimodal models, vision language models, and so on. There's virtually unlimited potential to solve real-world problems for people. We've talked about a number of them here. The people who can identify, like, okay, that is an important problem, and I can solve it by taking these 3 pieces of technology and combining them in this way and adding this, application logic on top of it. And then I can package it this way to turn it into a business. I think that's where there's going to be a lot of exciting opportunities in the next 10 years.
As I hear you talk about it, it feels like the premium would be like what I would call like systems-based thinking, like the inputs and outputs of this subsystem need to relate to this stuff. I don't need to know how to stuff transistors into here or whatever. That's just one part of the system, and then being able to orchestrate how they all work in concert together. I don't know what that, you don't take a class for that. So I think that's the next question. But I mean, I think, hey, freshmen out there, right? Like, think about how things work together and in a collective problem solving capacity.
I'd also put in a pitch also for human skills, which I think is kind of funny. There was obviously in the generative AI field, right? People talk about quote unquote prompt engineering, right? How are you gonna prompt the AI to give you the output that you want? And someone wrote a paper recently, just a few days ago, I saw, which basically said, it turns out most prompt engineering is actually just learning how to be a good, clear communicator. And that turns out to be helpful both in terms of dealing with AIs, but also in terms of dealing with other people.
Okay, so we talked about we've talked about adoption rate, we've talked about threats versus reality of the threats to job markets. Let's try to create a mental model for how people are valuing generative AI or not. So, Phil, you're talking with industry leaders all the time in the Alliance. Do you think they're understanding how generative AI will benefit the products and services they deliver?
Yeah, I think some of them are for sure, many of them are, and maybe let's separate that a little bit into kind of what I'm going to call cloud generative AI versus embedded generative AI, right? Gen AI
Sure.
at the edge. So in the cloud generative AI, that's obviously the thing that people have the most experience with, ranging from, Chat GPT to, Adobe Creative Studio and things like this. And I think there people are definitely, the smarter companies have started to get that figured out, right? I think what we were talking about before is also true that this is an enabling technology. This is underlying. And so Gen AI is going to be showing up in more and more things as a feature in different products. And that sort of gets to kind of almost like a Cambrian explosion of potential things, right? Of like, oh yeah, of course my email program has generative AI baked into it. Of course my messaging program has it. Of course Facebook has it. Of course my photo thing, to remove the people in the background that I don't want there. Like it's going to be showing up all over the place. For the edge, for Gen AI at the edge, I think that's a more nascent area, right? People are just starting to figure out like what are we going to use for it? Yeah, we think that it's going to be cool to have, a car that you can have a conversation with about how to change the tire, or, a kiosk at Home Depot which is going to tell you which plumbing fitting you need.
Right.
The challenges there being the things we talked about before, which is to make that happen in embedded products, it's got to be inexpensive, it's got to be energy efficient, it's got to be easy to use. And even more so, the use cases are a little bit less clear. It's more experimental. Hey, let's try this. Let's try this. I think this is a good idea. And I think time is going to tell.
And then it sounds like what you're saying is the value, like codifying that value into something they want to try in the market, because only the consumer will tell you with their dollars, right?
Yeah, right.
If it makes sense. Like, Jeff, you have anything to add to this idea of like the industry leaders you're chatting with and their thinkings?
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have said, and I think it'll progress this way. It'll start with things that are already on the internet, like Amazon product reviews and Yelp restaurant reviews, where it's pretty straightforward. And then it'll start spreading into other devices, more what you typically would call an embedded system, right? Your
Your toaster
refrigerator,
oven. Yeah,
your
right.
your vacuum cleaning robot, your car, and so on, because it's easier in those first cases I mentioned, like a company like Yelp. This doesn't require any huge new investment or new product, right? They can improve their existing product very quickly and provide value to consumers. Nobody needs to buy a new device, sign up for a new service, or anything like that. So I think you're going to see things like, you already are seeing them, things like that proliferate very quickly. And then that sort of brings awareness for other businesses. Oh, if they could do that for consumers, we could do this over here for lawyers or aircraft mechanics or whatever. And it's going to spread.
So I think that the final kind of question for me in the trying to get a mental model around value, I think we get a lot of feedback that it's like sort of there's so much hype about we're not even done with the hype of AI, regular AI, if that's a thing, right? Like, and then generative AI comes around. So I think there's a warranted, like, y'all keep talking about more and new and all that stuff. So can one of you guys synthesize an argument of how generative AI is actually sizably different from the AI we grew up with. I don't know, even just like, let's say Google search and YouTube title matching, right? Let's say that kind of pattern matching is sort of AI. Do we think generative AI is like a step change of value potentially?
Yeah, it is. And I'll express it two ways.
Hmm.
The first is it is actually literally the generative aspect, right? We have
Okay.
not most of us had access to AI that could create things for us. And you know what? Creating things is valuable, and it's also cool. It's like a mode of human expression, right? Some people write poetry, some people do watercolors, whatever. So being able to harness the power of computers to help us create things, whether for personal or business, okay, yeah, we have PowerPoint and we have Adobe Illustrator, but those are tools that require a lot of skill, right? I can't use Adobe Photoshop. It's totally beyond me, but I enjoy taking photos and I'd like to be able to enhance those photos. Well, now I'm going to be able to because I'm going to be able to have a conversation with Adobe Photoshop or its equivalent and say, you know what? I really want the faces to pop. No, I don't know which convolutional filter you require to do that. You figure that out, right? So the creative aspect, whether creative in the sense of human expression or creative in the sense of generating something like, hey, I need a slide deck. Make this slide deck look good. Here's my story. Like you said, maybe I'm good at pitching, but I'm not good at graphic design. My slides are terrible. Like, okay, this is a whole new thing, right? That we have not had access to before, that we're now getting access to very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And I would just add one more thing to that. So Jeff talked about, being able to generate, being able to create,
Yeah.
being able to personalize. Both of those, I think, are ways in which this is different than previous technology we've seen. The third thing is being able to synthesize, and meaning, what do respected medical authorities say about using zinc lozenges for colds? I could obviously go and Google zinc lozenge cold and spend a lot of time reading about it. But with an AI, we can have that synthesized. And that's a form of generation, but it is it's not creating from whole cloth, it's not creating from scratch. It's taking potentially a lot of input data and chewing on it and then saying, okay, Phil, here's the things that you care about. So I would just add that as a third thing.
The challenge, Carrie, is the potential truly is massive.
Right.
But it's not infinite. It's not everything, right? It's not going to solve all of our problems, and it's not going to all of this is not going to magically materialize in the next 6 months. So it's appropriate, I think, for people to be excited about this and companies to be investing in it. But we also need to sort of temper our expectations, pick the right problems, understand it's going to take investment and hard work to get most of these things built, and that not everything's going to work, especially not on the first try.
I couldn't think of a better summary, Jeff, to describing the value of generative AI versus the AI of yesteryear, I guess is what we'll call it. So I want to thank you guys for your time. It's been a great conversation. Phil and Jeff, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, Gary. This was fun.
Thanks very much, Gary.
Okay, cheers. Every time I talk to industry leaders like this, I learn so much. The Edge AI and Vision Alliance Summit is May 21st through the 23rd. At the summit, I'll be leading a conversation similar to this one with about 50 people. So A, you should go and use the discount code below. And B, if you're going, look up the schedule and join us at that generative AI session. Share and subscribe if you like this, and we'll keep generating more videos soon. Get it? Generating.